Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new session of the Urbanism Next Europe conference. This is session 3D, what to be prepared for on your way to zero-emission city logistics. The session is moderated by Streng, and I will hand over to him in 1 minute. I will just give you a couple of instructions on the housekeeping rules of the session. So you can write your comments in the chat box. You can view who is attending in the People tab, and you can ask your questions in the moderated Q&A area. So please put your questions there and not in the chat, otherwise it's difficult to follow them. Maximize your screen by hiding the chat or tapping the full screen icon if you don't see well the presentation. And I want to warn you that this meeting is being recorded, and the recordings as well as the presentations will be made available online after the conference. After the session, you can keep surfing on this platform and check the event chat, pools, people, and Q&A tabs. You can discover the other upcoming sessions and try the networking function, where you can also send direct messages to the other participants. So thanks for your attention, and I leave the floor to Jos. Bye.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen with you to start the presentation. We are very happy to have you on this session of Urbanism Next. This is not going the way we have a lineup of 4 speakers, of which I'll be the moderator and the first presenter. And then we'll address the topic of this session. So how do city logistics come in the urbanism playing field, so to speak, especially if you want to make them zero emission, as we have the intention in Rotterdam. Here you see the name of the speakers. They'll introduce themselves when they start their part of the session. And the idea is presented here, an approach from 4 different perspectives. And then we're curious what discussion those perspectives will trigger. That will be the perspective of local authority. I'm the representative of that. I work for the city of Rotterdam as a transport planner at the mobility department. We'll have a professional transporter, someone from the world of finance, and someone from the world of energy. And we think those are quite relative elements, quite important elements in the process, the transition we're trying to make in city logistics. And then here you have a graphic impression of what we're trying to achieve. So everyone is going to present their view of making the transition to zero emission city logistics. And then after that, there will be a confrontation between each of the angles. And the confrontation may either have as an element of conflict or a possibility for cooperation, either in lobbying or setting up initiatives jointly. So we're trying to fill this matrix, you could say. And of course, we call upon you as the audience to help us not to miss any key points or interesting additional angles. So now we'll start with the local authority, in this case, the city of Rotterdam. And here I try to visualize what's the problem: increasing urban density, a limited amount of public space, a limited amount of public traffic space as well. So there's good reason for local authorities to consider city logistics as part of urban development and urban management. I've briefly summed up some of the main elements: more people, more business, so more goods and services in and out and through the city, and all within the same boundaries, so increasing density. Then the consumers and the receivers, they change their behavior, also the suppliers of services, and all these increase the volume of logistic movements and activity. And of course, as I said, there's a growing competition for public space. we need to make sure that we have, on the one hand, we have sufficient space available for the supply of the city, the logistic functioning. On the other hand, we don't want to use more than necessary for this purpose. So those are the challenges we see. And of course, there are the other aspects of accessibility, traffic safety, quality of living space, urban health, that are more or less traditional, you could say already. Well, one of the elements in space, of course, concerns, do we want environmentally friendly vehicles such as cargo bikes, or do we want vehicles and it's not important here if they're zero emission or not, of course we prefer that, but also they have another association. Some people are very much in favor of cargo bikes, but you can imagine that if all of the goods transport in the city would be carried out by cargo bike, we would have an infarct, you would say in Dutch, a heart attack in the arteries of the urban system because of too many vehicles. So in some cases you want efficient large vehicles, but then perhaps at the right time, not when the schools are opening or going out. And in some areas you may prefer cargo bikes for other reasons. Well, one very important thing we see as our task, as our challenge, is if we need to find out if we have to deal, if there's a public responsibility. Well, we think there is. And in that case, we need to understand what are we talking about when we're talking about city logistics. That's why we're working on developing and keeping up to date a simulation tool which reflects all the processes taking place in the city and which helps us to analyze beforehand, if we consider a certain policy measure, what will be the probable effects. And if we produce this beforehand, we can also get feedback from the logistical actors in the city who are, of course, affected by the policy, and therefore they need to understand why this is done. And we think such a simulation tool, which we develop in a European project with TU Delft and TNO and other partners across Europe, such a tool which we develop is of great value to us. Here you see a brief impression of how this works. All the destinations and all the sources for trips are modeled, so we can actually quantify in the end a regular day of the week, and all the shipments taking place on an average day are modeled, and we can express this in terms of mileage, of emission, and also efficiency in the logistical chains. And of course, then the challenge is to optimize this system in terms of performance, and also to quantify the performance of the city in KPIs, in indicators that everyone can understand and that we can measure to see if there's improvement or development. This optimization, of course, already takes place on a day-to-day basis in individual companies. I think we'll hear something about this from next speaker. But some increases in efficiency cannot be achieved by individual players. Sometimes you need cooperation, and this cooperation sometimes needs to be orchestrated or regulated. So this element of sharing space, but not only space, also perhaps vehicles or other assets such as charging facilities, are a very important way, not only to make efficient use of space, but also in the financial sense. And I think our third speaker will certainly say a lot and interesting things about that. And finally, I think an important part of our message, especially since the COVID has come upon us, is that for businesses to recover, perhaps the increased efficiency is vital for them to survive at all. And it also automatically helps them, of course, to raise more, to make more money, so they can afford, so to speak, to finance the reduction of externalities. That is, to, for instance, to change the operations, switch to another type of vehicle, which may cost more in the beginning, although the TCO may be positive. There are all kinds of ways of using space efficiently at various scales. Sometimes outside the city we have hubs, but also packet lockers in the city center. Here you see one which obviously is taking up public space, and the top left one reminds you, of course, of some of the facilities which network managers, network operation companies have, and perhaps there may be a business model there for our last speaker from the Stedin company. I'm curious about his reaction to that. Then, as an authority, I'd like to point out we have three main ways of achieving the joint goal with all the logistical actors, of which we are one. One is to stimulate. This we can do by subsidy. We can lobby at higher levels, national or EU level. And also, of course, we can set the example by asking our suppliers to, whenever we have a procurement, we have a renewal contract, to come to please deliver their goods or services using zero-emission material transport. And this is something quite successful so far, especially the smaller vehicles already becoming quite standard, you could say. It's a minimum requirement, it's no longer an award criteria. Then if something doesn't come about by itself, but it's still necessary, such as, for instance, the sharing of assets or of space, then the government may step in as one of the partner or the initiating partner in initiatives to help bring about required change. I have some examples listed here. And finally, of course, we also need to regulate, to give clarity. And one thing, for instance, is the announcement of the zone for zero-emission city logistics, which I showed earlier on. In 2025, this is going to become operational. We need to announce this, of course, in due time so that people can make their preparations. And I'm very curious to hear from our next speaker from Euser Transport, the way they look at it and how they go about this preparation. Sorry, I said I already showed you the zone, but I do it now. So here you see on the top left, the intended zone, which is quite a large area, roughly, let's say, I think 10 by 10 kilometers. And there's a zone around it, as you can see it, where the definitive boundary has to be established formally, but also around it, of course, you need space, for instance, to consolidate flows into the city, to organize them zero emission, or to change from a conventional fossil-fueled tracker, to change a trailer to a zero-emission tracker. And the areas we have determined, and this map is not official yet, it has yet to be established, it's part of the spatial planning document under construction, the so-called omgevingsvisie, so environmental vision. And with our colleagues from the economics planning department, we have produced this map with preferred areas, search areas for logistical functions. And then how do we see our task? Well, as I said, regulation is necessary. And in the end, of course, it comes to be very firm. By 2030, you can no longer enter Rotterdam, the zero emission zone, with a freight vehicle unless you're zero emission. To get there, we do a lot of simulation now in various forms. And we have some milestones indicated here just to illustrate how we try to do it systematically and start in due time to make sure. And of course, we have to monitor then if we are getting there the way we foresee. And otherwise, we have to intensify our effort. And then, of course, if you have a plan, you need to remain curious about the results. So we need to predict the policy measure effect, as I already illustrated, using a simulation tool. We need to define and monitor KPIs, and we're looking forward to present the first monitoring round at the end of this year, because we signed the covenant for the zero emission zone December last year with a lot of parties, among them the organizations which will have a presentation later on. And then, of course, we also think now and then you need to present your view on international conferences, such as the Polish conference at the end of this year in Gothenburg. And of course, this session we're in right now is also an international stage. We're very curious to hear from our audience how they think of our joint effort. And this is the time for me to stop sharing my screen and announce our next speaker from Euser Transport, Daniel. So please share your screen, Daniel, and then we'll... Daniel, do you hear me? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I hear you. And I think I have shared the right screen. So you see my full screen. Do you? Yes, you see the right screen now. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Let me have a short introduction about myself and about the company I represent. Yes. Well, this is me, Daniel Spetter. I'm an operational director of a forwarding company in the Netherlands, located close to Rotterdam, a little bit south of the city center of Rotterdam. Working my whole life or career already in transport and logistics, 25 years roughly. And Euser Transport is a forwarding company, national transport, so only in the Netherlands. And yeah, so mainly focused with all the legislation and changes and transition, what's coming up in this business. Euser Transport, good to know, it is a family-owned company. It's over 100 years of existence. Started early in the early 1900s with a horse and a drawbar, bringing vegetables and fruits from the outsides of the countryside to the city of Rotterdam. Yeah, and when you exist already over 100 years, you have survived different types of crises, and it means also that you're quite flexible to adapt to changing circumstances. And that is, I think, one of the core DNA things of a family-owned company. So looking backwards in this 100 years, also now the first full electric trucks are purchased, only 2 of them. They will be delivered in the next coming weeks. So that is a big change for us. Yeah, and I guide you through the business of our transport and also this transition to zero emission vehicles. To understand our business, we are operating in several markets. We have a big proposition in retail, so supplying supermarkets, and also in the hotel and restaurant business. So that's roughly about 60-70% of our business. The total fleet we manage is about 325 units. Yeah, so that is a big-sized forwarding company in the Netherlands. We also have propositions in cargo, business, pallet distribution, and also local pharma distribution. So bringing medicines to hospitals, but also to the end user with smaller vehicles. And also that business is very related to very dense populated areas. The transport market in the Netherlands. Good to know, it is a very mature market. It is a very competitive market. So it is a business our customers are mainly looking for the lowest prices. So it's a low margin business. Um, and that's mainly where you see family owned companies. Um, they take the risk and the low margins. So the most of the big forwarding companies in the Netherlands are family owned companies. Today's world, um, we are happy that the zero emission zones are defined. So from uncertainty, it is now more or less to the steps of more defined and a certain situation which is facing us. So this is really speeding up the transition. We as forwarders know now what's coming up to us. Because looking backwards and looking a little bit forward, it all started in the 2014, where we call it, there was a Green Deal, there was a commitment of several parties, um, forwarders, government, and all different levels, to have a commitment to go to zero emission city distribution, city logistics. At that time, there were many trails and experiments. On top of that came the climate agreement, and more or less that came to a more concrete agenda how to go from the current situation to 2025, where there are defined 30 to 40 big cities with zero emission zones. So now we know which challenge is coming up to us. But in the forwarding business, in the transport business, we have many challenges. As Jos already said, we have urban areas. Those are areas where people like to live, like to work, spend their time. And on top of that, what's very important, we need clean air. Clean air is getting more and more the issue in these kind of urban areas. But a city is also where we want to have everything available. We want shops, we want restaurants, we want retail. And we consider it all very naturally that everything is available. And on top of that, we don't like these heavy trucks in these areas. And this is a conflict that we need to manage. And then local authorities come up with all good intentions to have very strict delivery windows, which ended up for us to have more trucks at the same time in the city. Limitations about the length of the truck, the heaviness of the truck. So again, we need more trucks in the same area. And on top of that, we also have all kinds of safety regulations. There are always conflicts between heavy trucks and pedestrians, cyclists. So that is not easy. Another thing is, for example, in the city of Amsterdam, we have now regulation to protect the historical character of the city, where we have canal gates and also bridges, which are suffering from the heavy traffic from the heavy trucks, which we also have to take in consideration. So this is more or less the playing field of a forwarding company when you want to enter a city center with a heavy truck. I told you, we as the transport sector, we know more or less where the zero emission zones are defined. And more and more cities are coming up with it. This is more or less the same picture as Jos showed. We have Rotterdam, we have Amsterdam, two big cities where we operate with our vehicles. And from 2025 on, there is a zero emission regulation. If we look at our suppliers, our OEMs, we call them original equipment manufacturers, the transition to electric heavy trucks is going on. There are already trucks on the market which you can buy from these manufacturers. In the beginning, we had all kinds of pilots, custom built trucks, but today you can order them. You can go to the dealer and buy a full electric DAF, Mercedes, Scania, or whatever. The first ones will be delivered, like ours, what we have purchased, and will be delivered in the next coming weeks. So the rollout starts, is then the big question mark? That's a really good question mark. I tell you what is our experience when we purchased the full electric truck. Is there a business case? I can be very short. No, there is no business case. For example, the purchase value of a full electric truck is now 4 times the price of a conventional diesel truck. On top of that, after the lifetime of the truck, of the usage period, you have the residual value of the truck. Nobody will give any commitment to the price of a truck after 7 years, so the residual value in your business case is 0. So no value for an electric truck after 7 years, where it is with a diesel truck, normally around 15% after 7 years. Then we come to the part of the maintenance and repair of a truck. We all expect that an electric truck should be less expensive because the driveline, the moving parts in the truck, it should be lower than a conventional truck. But the reality is a bit different, because we have this huge battery pack where all the OEMs take a warranty in their price for the battery, for the lifetime of the battery. So on maintenance and repair level, there is no difference. Then we come to the fuel of the truck, or the energy of the truck. Roughly, we can say that the energy for an e-truck is about 50% of the price compared to a diesel truck. But I come back to that later. The other thing what you should take into consideration, the infrastructure which you need for charging up the truck. And here is when it comes for us a bit fuzzy and a bit complicated. The costs for infra are huge, because for a truck you need very high power energy to charge the truck. In our calculations, where we use a truck about 7 years to compare the electric truck to the diesel truck, we come to an additional price of 140,000 euros or 20,000 euros additional costs to run the e-truck at this moment. This is excluding the cost for charging, for the charging infra. Also good to mention that we have, with the purchase of these trucks, we have a starting up subsidy which is included. And then we still come up to this additional cost of 140,000 euros over 7 years. So today's business case, it makes you cry. So from my perspective, if we want to make this transition, subsidies are still needed, but something else is needed. If you want to make this transition, you also need the commitment of your customers, the shippers, to make this at this stage happen. And for sure, the costs of the truck will all go down, and the cost of the batteries will go down in the next coming years. But if you want to make this transition, it should go step by step. It is not that from 24 to 25 we switch over with all our trucks to e-trucks. So there is a running in period. And during this running in period, the business case makes you cry. On top of that, the cost for charging infra is very unpredictable. You need big energy cables in your yard, which the cost you cannot predict, but they are extremely high from our perspective. Now, going over from a diesel truck to an e-truck gives you more and more challenges, because you have a limited range. Today's trucks is already doubled compared to the previous generation, where it was 100 kilometers. The trucks which will be delivered to us will have a range of roughly about 200 kilometers. So the battery capacity has increased. But don't forget, to operate these trucks, you need a dedicated planning tool to plan the route in relation to the state of charge of the battery. So if you want to do multiple routes or use the truck the full day, you need charging in between, fast charging, which is expensive, but also should fit into the route planning of the truck. And for sure, in the future, logistic models will change. More and more city hubs will appear. The model driving with your truck into the city center will change. So on the outskirts of cities, city hubs will appear where goods will be reloaded to zero-emission vehicles. Again, charging infra. Huge electric power is needed to charge heavy trucks. And for us, as the transport sector, the question is, will this electrical power be available within the period of time which we are considering? So where are we talking about? If you have an electric truck, today's truck, you have a battery capacity of 350 kilowatts. At least you want to charge 2 times in 24 hours. So if you look over a full year, this electric truck is the same amount of energy consuming as 100 families. But you have not only one truck. If we consider, for example, a distribution center of a big retailer in the Netherlands, where we have 100 vehicles running, you need huge amounts of energy. And the question is, are our suppliers able to deliver that? And for sure, things will change in future. So to run a fleet of 100 trucks, if you want to generate this with solar power, for example, you need over 100,000 of solar panels to deliver the amount of energy for 100 vehicles. So the demand for electrical power is huge if we want to make this transition. And those are one of the worries that we have as a transport sector. The trucks are there, the trucks are available, range is increasing, price will go down, but how about this electrical grid and the costs of this? So again, briefly, my summary. E-trucks, they will be there. Range limitations, but they will go up. The model will change to a more hub structure. So small DCs around cities for the last mile delivery, zero emissions. Financial impact, the price will go down, but today, we face a very bad business case, and we do need all parties to contribute to the finance of this transition. It cannot only be the problem of the forwarding or for the carrier companies. The price of transport will go up, and that is something we have to take in consideration. Again, our big worry about the charging infrastructure, the high demand for electrical power, and this is an unpredictable field which should be explored within the coming years to get more insight of that. Also very important is legislation. There is a level playing field today. We have zero emission zones. Okay, that's good. We know there is the direction to go to. That's a fact. So briefly, my summary: transition to zero emission city logistics. It will happen, but it is not so easy. So Jos, it's for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel, for a very interesting story from, let's say, ground level, actual practice of transporting things around in an ambitious company. There are 2 questions I'd like to put to you before we switch to Bart. One is from Giacomo. He has a question about the difference in the TCO between, you showed us about between diesel and electric trucks. And he is interested in the, let's say, the absolute value. So it's 140K as a part of 1 million or 2 million or 500,000. Can you say something about that?
Yes, of course, this is the additional amount of money that first comes from the amount of investment, because purchasing an electric truck is 400,000 euros compared to 80,000 euros so that's the financial gap that you have to cover. Residual value 0, and on top of that, on the running costs, today it comes only from the lower energy price. But don't forget, this charging infra, we pay about 120,000 euros to charge 2 trucks. And also, this is an amount you have to take in consideration and put in the cost of the running cost of your truck. Yeah. I hope this helps a little bit.
Yeah, there probably are more details, but then I think there could better be exchanged in a one-on-one.
Yes.
I think this makes clear that sharing this infrastructure may be one of the ways in which we can somehow overcome this big obstacle, I can imagine. There's one other suggestion made from Bart Dumoulin from the audience. He wants to ask you, to what extent does your company see the hydrogen-powered trucks as part of the solution?
That's a very interesting question, because first of all, I was not very in favor of hydrogen, because making hydrogen is taking energy, and you want to produce it with green energy. But are we able to, for example, we have locations where we run 100 trucks to go into the city center of Amsterdam. Are we able to deliver so much energy to this specific location that trucks will charge overnight, go into the city center and come back? Are we able, from an operational point of view, to do that? Or should it be a mixture of electric and hydrogen? That's very interesting. So both are very interesting to follow and will be solutions for the near future. It will not be a solo solution. There will be a multiple energy.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, for that answer. I think there's elements in it for both our next speaker and the last one. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor now to Bart Banning. Bart, please go ahead, share your screen with us.
Yes, good afternoon. Already it's 10 minutes past 12. You see our screen, Jos?
Not in presentation mode, but we can see it. Good.
Okay, I'll put it in transportation mode right now. All right. Well, a very good morning to you all. My name is Bart Banning. I'm working for almost 12 years in the transport and logistics sector for ABN AMRO Bank in the Netherlands. Well, it's a very nice and dynamic sector, as all companies are dealing with logistics services for the shippers from other sectors. That's making it very interesting. And especially during COVID-19, the sector has proven not only its adaptiveness, but also its innovative competence. And we need that because it's an essential sector for society. On the other hand, the sector has a huge challenge. The Paris Agreement ambitions and the Green Deal ambitions done. Being the third sector that produces the largest, we all need to step up and take action. This also requires a box of adjusted financing instruments to offer logistics companies and their shippers the appropriate financing solutions. Well, I see this sustainable city distribution as being one of the segments that gives us opportunities to make important steps and explore innovation to head us in the right direction of a zero-emission transport modus. There are great opportunities ahead. However, we should all take responsibility to succeed. It's also a little bit a message from my former speaker. The Urbanism Next initiative is a very nice example in how to work together in order to reach the goals we cannot achieve without cooperation and sharing knowledge. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. Well, as said, we have a great responsibility to contribute to the Paris Climate Agreement and make it happen. On the technological side, there are many transport asset innovations that are leaving the production lines right now. All the OEMs have their programs set to the production of zero-emission vehicles at this moment, but also will expand that the coming years. But my vision is sustainability is more than just making use of zero-emission transport modes. It also concerns healthy business cases. My former speaker has indicated the business case from Euser point of view, but it concerns healthy business cases both on technological and making use of the asset innovations in order to reduce emissions, but also the economical side, make investments that is also financially stable for the company in order to be a future-proof company. Therefore, the business case should create value on both climate and business. However, one of the problems is that costs are mainly to be calculated in terms of euros and revenues on sustainability is not. So we should give CO2 reduction a price in euro. The real picture these days is that most of the transportation companies that are willing to invest in innovative zero-emission trucks cannot agree with their shippers that the reduction of emission in this stage of the innovation life cycle leads to a high freight price in euros. And everybody knows that the cost of a sustainable investment is great, as we calculated in freight price per kilometer. That's the example that Euser mentioned gives a very clear difference between the Euro 6 motors and the zero-emission motoring. So we should consider once again to set a price on CO2 emission in the logistics activities. In order to do so, we need to break through the traditional way of thinking. More than half of the world's population now lives in urban areas, increasingly in highly dense cities, even more across the high-income countries, among them Western Europe, the Americans, Japan, and the Middle East. More than 80% of the population live in urban areas, and it's still growing. This has huge impact on the current and future city distribution activities and the challenges that we have. The UN 11th Sustainable Development Goals is to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So the sense of urgency is high, and we really need a change in attitude and the responsibility of all parties. Well, ABN AMRO is part of the Green Deal ambition. This is not just a piece of paper. No, we also have the responsibility to fund the sustainability transition. There are a lot of opportunities and lots of examples of interesting logistics co-creation. On this slide, you see several names of companies that are doing so in the Netherlands. But we cannot and we should not close our eyes for the challenges that are coming along with these early stage innovation forms. After all, banks, among them ABN AMRO, also have a responsibility to finance future-proof companies in a proper way. So sustainable financing is not purely financing sustainability, but it's surely also financing in a sustainable way. What do I mean by that? By offering financial structures in a way that makes and keeps a company future-proof. So not at any cost. Innovation includes risks and costs that should be considered. TCO example of Euser, once again, was very clear. But the TCO from an electric truck is different as it is from in the form of an early stage innovation. We sense a lack of experience on economic lifetime and residual value of these assets in order to make the correct financing cost calculations being used as input for total cost of transportation. Well, you can imagine that the TCO will change very severely if we calculate with a lifetime of 6 or 10 years, or we think the residual value of the end of life is 10 or 25%. So innovations in itself have their challenges, but that counts also for the way they are financed. ABN AMRO has a clear vision on sustainability and how helping our clients to make this sustainability transition. One of the slogans that we have in our strategy is banking for better for next generations to come. That's the clear ambition of ABN AMRO. Well, it's not said and done, but it's a journey that we want to make together with our clients. There's the light again. Sorry, I have to wave some because I'm sitting here alone. But it's a journey that we want to make together with our clients. That's what I wanted to say. And surely requires an organizational effort to make important steps to create the solid foundation that we need. So we firstly invested in our organization by creating a culture that complies with our ambition on the sustainability topic. That's taking place also already for several years now. In this slide, you can see the example of how we combine the business trends on the one hand, product development and sector knowledge on the other hand, which must ultimately lead to financing propositions together with our clients to make the business work. So we are building an organization that fits on the sustainability challenge and still are developing right now. But that's not enough. What we see on the outside is that it's difficult to build financial solid business cases on these kind of zero emission distribution. Of course, there are some good examples of companies that are intrinsic, motivated, and convinced that it's possible to make the zero emission transition work. You see some of them at the bottom of the slide. They're driven by technology that currently provides emission reducing transport assets, also battery electric, but also already some of them are using hydrogen. However, as I mentioned earlier, for far most of the existing transport companies, it is not possible to raise the freight transport price to cover the higher investment cost of zero emission assets in order to build a proper business case. 4, competition is strong. What Euser also already said, strong shippers often still choose for low transportation costs based on mostly fossil fuels. It is time in our vision, and also personally my vision, to empower all strategic sustainability agendas, to support the leader companies. We need leader companies to get the transition done. Euser is one of the leading companies, making successful innovation in the transition period. So other companies can profit from the experience that these leading companies have been making. We need the power, that's my main message of today, we need the power of the ecosystem that is built on shared values, making a better world with, in this sector, making use of clean transportation modes. All parties involved should participate together by making long-term contracts. There are not many long-term contracts, and you should know out of a financial perspective what a long-term contract can mean to get the financing business done. We need long-term contracts. We need to share risks. We need to share benefits. As long as the transportation company is asked to bear all the loads on its own, we cannot make the progress that is needed. We need to share the costs and share the value of innovation by changing from traditional financing purely 100% on the asset and the logistic service provider to a financing method in which all supply chain partners take their role. It's maybe a little bit difficult draw that I did on this slide, but that's my main message, that this is the power of the ecosystem and it can work. As I earlier mentioned, we need the ecosystem to make the next steps, and there are great movements going on. Rotterdam is hosting this event, and I'm glad that ABN AMRO is part and member of the conference, because it's a good example on how the sustainable intercity could be realized by making use of an ecosystem. In this covenant says, we see that a lot of different companies in the supply chain are cooperating together, combining knowledge of different parties and taking initiative to facilitate the ecosystem in the Rotterdam city. This gives great opportunity to really make the change and can even lead to new logistics concepts like pooling or sharing assets. It leads to new possibilities that transforms the traditional way of thinking into a future way of thinking. In my opinion, asset sharing and co-creation can lead the way to great opportunities to accelerate the sustainability shift, and we need that. Based on an ecosystem, on sharing knowledge, sharing the capacity, sharing the risks and the benefits, and the intrinsic motivation of all companies taking part of the logistics chain willing to change. You can say that you want to reduce emissions, but what do you really do on that? What is the action program? Also on the side of the shippers. Well, this leads to a new asset sharing models and to conceptual innovation by co-creation. It's not about buying or owning transportation assets. It's about availability of the capacity at a true price that contributes to a zero emission supply chain management. Clean transportation has another price than the transportation modes that are using right now. We should be convinced of that, and that should be the starting point of our discussion. Well, I'm coming to my last slide. It takes guts, it takes courage to make a start as a front runner and lead the way. I'm very excited to hear from my fellow presenter from Euser. What is the really intrinsic mode for them, despite the business case that is dramatic, to invest in a zero-emission electric truck in the business of city distribution. Difficult challenge can become more easy through cooperation. The clock is ticking, so let's do it. And don't forget, if we do not act, nobody will. We should accelerate together. That is the final word in my presentation, Jos.
Thank you, Bart. That's an interesting appeal and a challenging one as well. Before I put the question to Daniel, which you incorporate in your last slide, there's a question from the audience, including myself. So I asked in the Q&A section, because I remembered from Daniel's presentation that the residual value of an electric truck is zero, and it's an important chunk out of the TCO. So do you think that your organization or the financial sector in general have something to offer there? Because of course, obviously, a zero emission vehicle is worth something, even if no one is willing now to stick out his or her neck to buying it back beforehand.
Yeah, but that's a really, that's true, surely, but it's what I mean is where the connection is being made between the transport company that is making use of this investment and the banking company that is getting knowledge from the transport company in how these models can work. And there will be different scenarios. I think maybe Daniel talked about the residual value of a zero. I talk about 10%. We both don't know what's the really truth in 7 or 8 years. Maybe an electric truck can be easily economic in 10 years. That can also be the case. But we have to get some experience on that. And that's what our role is as financing company, to be interested in the developments that are being made by the OEMers, the investment that has to be made by the transport company, and to cooperate and see how we can finance this, making also use for subsidy programs, because whenever the innovation is in an early stage, we need these subsidies, because otherwise the difference in price is too big.
Okay, thank you for that. Then I'd like to ask Daniel now, please answer Bart's question. You must have your answer ready, I guess.
First of all, I really like your story, Bart, because this is exactly the point where it's all about. Your question is, what is our motivation, despite of this bad business case today, to go into electric vehicles? That in the end, it is our motivation to do something, and you can in the end you can say we wait and we see what the business is doing, but we want to learn, and we know there is a transition period where we are now until this 2025, where we have to make small steps, and we want to learn and we want to share our knowledge with all parties. So we feel the need to do something. We are a bit anxious and we are a bit curious, and there are a lot of uncertainties, but we take the step. We take the step with 2 vehicles, and the good thing is we have commitment from 2 shippers who will say we take the additional costs and we share some costs. So this is the only way to start this transition little by little and step by step. So we go for it. And we want to learn and we want to share this knowledge with all the parties. Also for the OEMs. OEMs are also facing a very difficult period of time. They have to make the transition. They have a huge amount of research and development to make this step. So we have to go together. And again, what you also say, but the price will be different. You know, we consider transport as water coming out of the tap. It's always there for the lowest price. If we want to remain on that track, nothing will happen. So true pricing, that can only be the basic if you want to make together this transition. And we take some risk. We take also with our shippers, but it is step by step going into this direction. And as a big company, we are in a position to do something.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Daniel. I think I'd like to add, it's a point, I think, for further discussion. We cannot solve it all here, but it might be an idea, given that there is a challenge for the country as a whole, even at European level, I guess, that this question, for instance, of the residual value, I think if we could somehow make an arrangement that a combination of actors could say, okay, we stand for, let's say, 15% or 10% residual value for the number of vehicles we're going to introduce to the market the next 10 years, then perhaps the European Investment Bank or something could serve as a kind of a buffer, because obviously this truck will have some value, even if you take it apart and reuse the spare parts. But that could be a part of the element, and it's beyond the scope of each individual player, but we could unite in lobby.
Well, that's exactly what I mean by getting the ecosystem working, that everybody who's in place in this subject will take its responsibility and see what creativity can offer to make the business case maybe not work for the full 100%, but
we'll take a big chunk out of it.
Risk will always be there, but that's the way.
Okay. Let's leave it at that for now. Interesting point, but of course we have one other relevant, and it's not for free. So more costs probably to come from the lips of Tristan. Please take the screen and the floor, Tristan.
Yes, thank you. You should hear me now, and now I will share the presentation. And right now it should be in full screen mode. So I will introduce myself shortly. My name is Tristan Wanders. I'm working at Stedin Netbeheer, which is a network operator in the Netherlands. My role currently is a key account manager, in which I facilitate new and existing clients with their challenges in regard to the energy transition. And so I will give the view of a network operator on the zero emission city logistics. I will begin by showing you the changing landscape for a network operator. And it basically begins with the energy transition. In the traditional in a traditional way, there are producers and there are customers, and the energy flows one direction from producers to customers. With the change from fossil fuels to renewable fuels, this changes, and energy flows a bidirectional way. It flows from producers to customers, but also from customers. In short, we can changing from a demand-driven centralized energy system centralized. As a network operator, we build energy infrastructure, especially the grids, and we do this for electricity and gas. The energy has a consequence that we can see the natural gas decrease and the electricity demand increase over time. This has an influence on the electricity grid. As a network operator, we have to adapt the electricity grid, and this has consequences for time, space, and to show you how our electricity grid is built up, we have basically the structure of our electricity grid, where we have the high voltage, the medium voltage, and the low voltage. And each of these parts of our grid have different time, costs, and spaces which they require to adapt. So our low voltage grid will take approximately a half year to adapt and has low costs to do so. Whereas the medium voltage grids take up to 2.5 years and have higher costs and have higher space requirements. And in the end, our longest, the high voltage grid, can take easily up to 5 years or longer and has a very high cost to change. We have to keep this in mind with the change in the caused by the energy transition. So what is the vision and strategy of Stedin? Basically, our main goal is facilitating the energy transition. To do so, we have a few objectives. Our most important objective at this point is the predictability and planability, which means we have to know what is coming towards us so we can plan to make sure everything is realized on time. A consequence of this is basically that we have to invest efficiently. So we cannot just invest in our entire electricity grid. That's basically that costs too much. So we have to know where demand is concentrating so we can invest in those places. In the end, our goals are to get the grid connections and infrastructure on time and at minimal costs. And that basically also means that the image and customer satisfaction increases. So what are the challenges or the impact of the logistical sector on us as a network operator? Basically, we see two things happening. First, we can see that the total cost of ownership of electrical logistical trucks decreases, which means that we probably see in the future an increase of these trucks. The second factor that increases the electrification of the logistical sector is the zero emission zones, which we are now discussing. These zones these zones cause electrical trucks, which cause an increase in electrical demand for us as a network operator. So basically, what are our challenges? The electrification of the logistical sector causes an increase in the demand for power. To meet these demands, we have to invest in the electricity grid. However, as shown before, these investments can take multiple years to realize. So therefore, it is crucial for us as a network operator to provide some insight in the future demand so we can invest efficiently. This last one is most important. We have to get insight in future demand so we can invest efficiently. So what are the locations that we think this charging infrastructure is needed? Basically, the labor costs contribute up to 50% of the total cost of ownership in the logistical sector. This means that stopping the vehicle costs money. So we can conclude that charging infrastructure will be required on those locations where the driver is stopping anyway. so on stops or basically at the depot. As a result, our influence as a network operator on the charging locations is quite limited because they will be placed on locations where the driver is stopping, and because of the high cost, we will not have any influence in changing that. Charging locations have to be examined, and they can be categorized in public and private locations. First, the public locations. Public locations are strategic locations for charging infrastructure throughout the country. In this case, we as a network operator mainly see a role for municipalities to give an idea of where these locations will be most likely to occur. It's crucial for maintaining a balanced electricity grid that at these locations a combination with renewables and storage is facilitated. The private locations, that are the charging points on the own ground of companies, which my fellow speaker from Euser already mentioned at their companies. And for us as a network operator, it is crucial to obtain insight in these future energy demand. So we have to know what is needed at what time and where, so we can invest in our electricity grid to get the energy there on time. Smart charging and the combination with renewables and possibly storage is also crucial here to make sure that it is feasible to invest. So how do we obtain this insight in future demand as a network operator? Basically, we've done a few things so far. As Stedin, as a network operator, we've contacted 2 business parks as a pilot. We did one in Delft and we did one in Barendrecht, to get an idea of what their plans are regarding the future demand. What we did next is we contacted some usual suspects in the sector, and we tried to get their future demand available and get some insights with regard to this. And finally, we did a survey with regard to the sector association with Evo Venidex. We asked them to set out a survey under their members to ask about their expectations with regard to their future demand increase as regard to the electrification of the logistical sector. So what have we done so far? The public sector, we've contacted municipalities. We are contributing to the NAL task force and to the logistical 010 Rotterdam, where we contribute, and we work with Jos. We work with Streng. And in the private sector, we used our key accounts. We did an email campaign, and we did a cold calling, LinkedIn request, and as told before, we did a survey for the branch association. And all this we do to obtain insights in future demand, so we can invest efficiently. Then basically, what have we learned from this? We've learned a few things. One of the most important things is that for us as a network operator, it is hard to come in contact with the relatively new parties in the logistical sector. Most parties will come in contact with the network operator for the first time because they are upscaling their energy demand and need bigger connections to the grid. At this time, most of the logistical parties, not all of them, are unable to provide us as a network operator, with a detailed insight in their future demand. Still, most things are still very unclear, which cause them not to give a detailed insight. So what do we know? Our simulations, if we need to obtain insight in future demand, we need to make simulations based on accessible data, in which they are required to provide insight in the future demand. And all these things have basically one goal, and that is future demand for us. Key takeaways. So basically, what are the key takeaways for us as a network operator to take away? I have got 4 takeaways. First of all, the network operator is a crucial stakeholder regarding zero-emission logistics. In the end, we have to make the grid connections, and we have to make sure that we do this on time. 2, and this is one of the most important, make sure the network operator is involved in an early stage, because the grid connections take a long time to realize. 3, Share all the available plans and ideas regarding charging infrastructure, even if they are not definite yet. Even if you are in a very early stage with your plans, contact your network operator so they can take into account what your plans are and can invest efficiently if they need to. And the last one, keep in mind the long lead times, as I showed before, for realizing charging infrastructure. A year is a very short time for a network operator. And with this, I'll give back the presentation to Jos.
Okay, thank you, Tristan. Well, I think as the other speakers, you have certainly lived up to my expectations in presenting the relevant issues and pointing out things. There is one question actually from Bart, but I think he may represent more interested listeners. He is curious, is there a cooperation or a sharing of knowledge between network operators and perhaps third parties to have a joint and mutual vision on energy grid development?
Yes, the short answer is yes. We have a mutual cooperation between the 3 largest network operators in the Netherlands. We consult and we share our knowledges that we get from the sector. And basically, we as Stedin were the first in the Netherlands to consult an investigation in future demand for the logistical sector. We have shared this, and basically we are going to extend this, and we are going to, with an ascending organization called ELAT, we are going to make this investigation a bit bigger to hopefully obtain more insights. And in the end, basically what we want is so that we can invest based on those insights in future demand, so that when in 2025 or perhaps in the year before 2024 or 2023, if the parties are asking for their charging infrastructure, then we can realize them and we have the needed infrastructures in the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. There's another interesting connection, I think, with Euser Transport, with Daniel, because you said, whom have we contacted so far? I'm just curious, have you contacted Euser Transport? Daniel, have you been in touch with Stedin for your future demand? Or?
Yes and no. Locally, yes, but actually this morning I was with one of our big customers, where we have defined a roadmap to make the transition to 100 vehicles in Amsterdam and 80 electric vehicles in Den Haag, etc. In this roadmap, we are contacting the network operators to show the demand for energy within the next coming years up to 2025. But my question to Tristan is, should I be worried that this network for this heavy trucks is available on time? I have a worry.
I understand that, and you're not the only one that has that worry. The question is a very good one. It's yes and no, and it's a little bit difficult because you have to, what comes first? In order for us to invest, we have to get some insight in what is required from the parties to what they are needed for energy demand in the future. But on the other side, if that's not required, if that's not obtained, what do we do next? We do have to make some decisions very soon, because as I showed you, our lead times are very long. So in order for us to get everything with what we expect for 2025 in the ground, we basically have to start tomorrow. So we still have time, but for us as a network operator, we have to get those insights in what demand is going to in 2025. What demand is going where? We have to get that within a year, and then we can make the required adjustments.
Yes. Okay. Well, sorry to interrupt, but
Go ahead, Jos.
Well, my point was, of course, there is in the projection a division. I don't know how relevant it is, but as public authority, of course, we're also interested in what is our role in this situation. because I can imagine that Daniel would prefer, if possible, to have all the power available at their operation locations, so either with the customer or at their own premises. But you already mentioned the range is still limited, so probably opportunity charging may be part of the future way of operations. But then, of course, you would have to have guaranteed access, I imagine, so that you can actually plan your operations. So even if you would supply energy on the way to a customer, then still you have to make a reservation. And that is one of the things we are considering, if perhaps a combination is possible, that, for instance, take your location at Barendrecht, that's one of your, where your company is located. If somehow you could exploit a set of fast chargers there, and when your vehicles are on the road, then other vehicles passing by Barendrecht could do opportunity charging at your premises, it may make it interesting for you to earn back earlier the investment, or perhaps there could even be a partly public function as well. Do you think that is a kind of way forward? It's a question to all three of you from your various angles. So I'll start with Daniel, please. Sorry.
Yes. Yes, I think this will be the future, but don't forget this will be a huge reset of the way you use your transport capacity, and also in the availability of transport capacity, that we should take into account that we have opportunity loadings in between. So the whole transport model of what we operated the last 100 years will change totally, because ranges will be, they will also go up, but opportunity charging will be necessary, and also making use of the infrastructure of other parties. This total reset, this change in forwarding business has to be is one of the challenges we're going into this decade.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just to give the others the time, because we are nearing 1 o'clock. Everyone is getting hungry, I think so. Perhaps Tristan, you can give your view on this aspect.
Yeah, for us as a network operator, sharing means in totally a lower load on the grid. So for us, yeah, it's a good idea. What we hear from the logistical parties until now is that they are still, knowledge is very unknown with regard to charging infrastructure. And basically at this point we see they at first they want to make sure that their own fleet is able to run. That's the most important thing. So yeah, it should be a good idea. But it's difficult. I think it's difficult to realize in practice.
Okay, topic of investigation. And since we don't have too much time, I think we should do it in the form of pilots. That's my personal view. So if we don't know it and you need to make a decision in time, then let's just try out something and accept the fact that if we do a trial, that we have taken the wrong direction, and then we can correct the course in time before we make a definite plan, which is completely wrong. That is my view on the point. Please, Bart.
We also should not forget the importance of the front runners that we have now, that also in this subject they could cooperate more with each other on how their vision is. I think for Daniel, he has one wish, that its electricity grid is guaranteed at the moment that he wants, because what Tristan also said, a lot of costs of the transportation companies is in people, and as a transporting a truck is standing still, it costs money. So by dividing the capacity to several players, you can use surely a platform technology or otherwise forms of digitization, which gives us means to plan also the loading capacity in a proper way. But we should do that together, and I think there will be also some financing solutions, and maybe the municipality of Rotterdam can take action on that also, to see what we can do with the electricity grid around on the levels around the zero emission area that you are developing right now, to set maybe at some points to set some electricity charging infrastructure there. But I don't know if there's time, but does a transportation company like Euser have a preference to have access to a public charging station, or do you have a preference to have it on your own location?
I think we don't care.
As long as the charging is guaranteed.
Yeah, but from an operation point of view, you will have it in your own premises, your own yards. But for example, for some customers, we will charge on their premises.
Yeah.
So there we already have the model of sharing.
Yeah.
That's the way forward. I see from participant Bart Dumoulin in the question and answer section that the Flemish government is already encouraging through subsidy companies making available the infrastructure for others. So this is semi-public variant, and of course there's economic advantage in that as well. And in fact, I'm quite happy to announce that each one of us, well, I haven't spoken to Daniel about this, but Rotterdam, as I pointed out in my presentation, is aware that sharing both space and finance and energy is an element we need in making the transition happen. And there may be an opportunity at relatively short notice, with financial encouragement also from the national government, to try out something in this line, actually near Barendrecht. So I will probably knock on your door shortly, Daniel, and perhaps in the next edition of this conference.
What a nice coincidence.
We may be able to have a session next year with the outcome of that initiative, or at least the intermediate result. I'd like to ask each one of you, because we're nearing the end of this session, if there is a message or a question you would like to send to, I must say we have a modest audience, but of course they stayed with us for 1.5 hours, so I think they're quite motivated and interested in what you'll have to say. So I'll start with you, Tristan.
No, not at this time.
Okay, that's a very efficient answer. Thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, we are in a transition phase, and I think the same message as Bart has. Let's go together. All parties are needed to make this transition. Don't shift it in the hands of the forwarders or the shippers or whatever. It's a common commitment is needed.
Okay, that's a quite clear statement. I cannot do anything else but subscribe to it. Please, Bart, your final remark.
Well, not only the cooperation in the Netherlands. Yesterday I was in the opportunity to shortly break in the session and listen to the introduction yesterday afternoon. I forgot his name, sorry, but there was a question on what kind of good examples in America would be for Europe in order how in America some cities are struggling and getting solutions to the city distribution subject, because where you live, it's always there. And he said that the city of Portland was a very good example. Maybe we should also learn from other cities in other countries on other regions to not be creative on a subject that has already been discussed and invested and invented elsewhere. So I should make it more an integrational subject, and I think the theme that we have today and these 2 days are a very good example to join in sharing knowledge from other cities.
Thank you. That's completely, of course, in the spirit of an international conference, to extend a hand also and express curiosity to other, because this is Urbanism Next Europe, and I think it's from across the Atlantic Ocean that the original mother conference of ZECL stems.
Yeah,
I know, but it's just a coincidence that Rotterdam is one of the founding cities of the C40 cooperation between cities, with sustainability ambitions, and they have a global network. And I think that Portland may be among those cities that could provide a very concrete way of perhaps linking. So we'll be in touch later on, I guess, Bart, to see if we can explore this.
Yeah.
I'd make one final round to the.
I have also one
audience
to add to Bart to one final takeaway. That it's important for us to share our information with each other, so that we also know from each other which our obstacles are, and we have to do it together, like Daniel said. And if we don't share our information, we don't know what each other's obstacles are, so we can get them out of the way.
Okay, well, very well summed up, I would say, Tristan. Actually, this was, of course, our effort in this session to start to identify the confrontations, the conflicts, and the synergies. And I'm quite sure we'll be able to cooperate along the lines we sketched in this session. I'd like to ask now one final round for our audience in the Q&A session. If there's anything urgent you have to tell us or ask us, it's possible. And of course, this is also possible one-on-one. You can listen back to the session and then contact either the organization or us. If not, then I'd like to thank the conference organization, Polis and Urbanism Next, for the opportunity to have this very interesting discussion. Thanking all other speakers for their contribution, and looking forward to let's say, tell any audience in future about the fruits of our future cooperation, no doubt inspired by this session. So thank you all, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
your lunch.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.